Okay, so this is me back in 2019. I've been chasing for a couple of years, seriously at this point. And to get this sort of photo, you set up the camera on the tripod. Um, you have a lightning trigger, which senses when lightning strikes, then triggers the camera. And you point at the storm and hope that there's a strike eventually. So at that point, my arm had been up in the air for several minutes. And finally, I got a lightning strike. Looks like I'm pointing at it. So that's me. I started, my first picture of lightning was back in 2011. This is from my front porch. I fairly recently got a new camera. I set it up to automatically take photos with a 30-second shutter time. So the shutter was open for 30 seconds. And the storm was pretty intense, so I was fairly confident that there'd be some lightning in those 30 seconds, and I got lucky. I mean, I was very excited at the time. Today, I probably wouldn't even edit that photo, but it's still very exciting. And I really didn't do much more until 2018, when a friend invited me up to Phoenix for something called Monsoon Con. And we were so inspired by that gathering of storm chasers that after the convention was over, we drove back and found a storm. This is south of 3 Points. And I got my first ever sunset lightning, which I thought, this is the best photo ever. I'm never going to get anything better than this. And I mean, it's a very cool photo, but I was very excited by it. This is the first ever photo that I sold a print of. What I love particularly about this photo is you can see the Casino del Sol down here, tiny little thing in the bottom right corner, and it really shows the scale of lightning and storms, that it totally dwarfs the mountain range, the Tucson Mountains, and the casino. Oops, wrong way. Wrong way, there we go. So the person I sold this to happened to live at the base of that mountain, and that's why she bought the photo. So I got very lucky that she saw the photo in a little exhibition and wanted to buy it. This was taken from almost exactly the same point as the previous photo, just pointed away from the casino. As you can see, there's two different photos of the same lightning strike, two different cameras. I actually had two cameras at that time. I made an investment. This shows how I was set up. You can see my car with cameras on each side. The doors are open in case I need to make a quick getaway, and I'm being careful to respect the private property, do not trespass sign. That's always very important when you're out chasing a storm. It's easy to get sidetracked and go somewhere you're not supposed to go. But on this occasion, I stayed this side of the sign and got some wonderful photos. Community is very important. This shows some of the people who belong to the official Tucson Storm Chasers Facebook group. We went out on a group chase in 2018. We went all the way down to McNeil, which is way southeast of Tucson. This is one of the photos I got. I love the landscape, the sunlit green grass there. Unfortunately, this year there's a lot less green grass than there have been in previous years because we had a dry winter. But 2018, it looked wonderful out there, and we had a great time all together. A lot of it got the same lightning bolts from different angles. This is another place where I met up with a couple of friends. As you can see, we had a lot of cameras on a lot of tripods. It looks like I'm just pointing away from the storm with my camera there on the left, but in fact, the storm was all around us, and that's why we had so many cameras. They were all pointing in different directions. This is the radar of that, that I took a screenshot of that storm. And This blue circle shows my position. The red dot indicates a person, so that'd be me or one of my friends. Somebody else up here, a different red dot showing another storm chaser. And then it shows where the storm is. You can see that we're just here outside the storm. We're not getting rained on. It's a good position. And the storm itself is that big red intense part of the radar. This is an app called Radar Scope, which I definitely recommend. It can show you distances. So there I'm measuring the distance from our position to where the lightning is happening. 4.3 miles, that's probably about as close as I'm comfortable getting most of the time. It's a good distance where you can see the storm, you can see the clouds, the structure, and you can see the lightning, but most of the time you're pretty safe about that distance. The app also shows you this, which is called VIL, or Vertically Integrated Liquid. And this is a measure of the amount of moisture that's up in the sky. So basically, when this is a big number, that means there's a lot of rain waiting to fall on you. In this case, there's 53 kilograms of water in a column of area 1 meter squared. And then finally, this measurement shows you how high the clouds are. The higher the cloud, the more likely you're going to get an amazing storm. Most people wouldn't go storm chasing until that number is 35,000 feet. In this case, it was 41,000 feet. So we knew we were on an amazing storm. A little later that year, I took this photo out in Sells, west of Tucson. Jamie McCarty, who's a local poet, she found that photo on the internet, and she wrote to me to ask if I would mind if she used it as a cover on her book of poetry. And I was delighted to do that. It was the first and last time I've ever sold a photo to be on the cover of a book. But Jamie's become a good friend. We've actually gone out storm chasing together. And she had a wonderful time doing it. So that wasn't something I sought out. Sometimes if you post something on the internet, you get famous accidentally, and I did. And this is the radar of that storm. As you can see, there was a lot of lightning going on, but because the rain was so heavy, you're really only going to see the lightning bolts that are like on the front edge here, because the rain is going to obscure any of these lightning bolts behind it. Rain is actually a lot more dense than you realize, and it can obscure some wonderful lightning, sadly. This is my closest ever encounter with lightning. I was, again, west of Sells, west of Tucson, and there was a storm coming towards me from Ajo. It was getting a little close, so I had 2 cameras out. I packed up the first camera. As I was leaning into the car to put that first camera down, I heard this huge clap of thunder and saw this flash of lightning behind me. And I was thinking, oh, I hope my second camera caught that. And I was so lucky. It not only caught the lightning, it wasn't overexposed. It's right in the center there. And I immediately texted friends and said, I'm fine. I almost died, but I'm fine. And then when I posted this to our Facebook group, my friend Devin Russell said, oh, my wife and I were at the gas station in Sells, and I think we caught the same thing. And you can see it is the same. This here is this part of my photo. And so you can see the third one over on the right-hand side of his photo, which is these tendrils that are coming in on the right-hand side of my photo. So you can see how close it must have been to me. And again, just to show the radar, you can see the lightning is starting to fall in this green area, which is ahead of the main storm. And that's why I decided to pack up. You can see there's my red dot and there's somebody else's red dot a little further up the road, and they were probably packing up too. And then after that strike happened, this is what the radar looked like. And you can see these are the lightning flashes that landed. And you can see how zoomed in this is because that, again, there's me and there's that other person up the road. So on this first one, those lightning flashes would have been almost on top of my red dot. So again, I would never plan to be that close. And I would definitely recommend that none of you plan to be that close, but I was just so happy that my camera caught it. Moving on. Composition, foreground. As you've probably already seen, I love to get a foreground where the sun is shining. In this case, on this wonderful ancient tree, and then the storm is dark in the background. This is up by Safford, east of Tucson. The second one here, the lightning is really a secondary to the amazing downdraft, that rain falling out of that cloud. It just shows the power of the storm and the release of that liquid, that rain, that moisture. So those are the things I look for when I'm composing a shot or hoping it's going to happen. And again, there's our little radar showing, like in the first one there, I was almost 20 miles away, but that lightning is still worth capturing. No point in driving any closer than that. Little cautionary tale. I know you probably all heard, don't drive in the washes. This is actually out at Wilcox Playa, which is salt flats. It's actually a dry lake, or in this case, it wasn't so dry. Had someone, a storm chaser who was unfamiliar with the area, thought they'd get a little closer, thought they'd drive out there. Definitely not a good idea. We couldn't get her out. We had to get a tow truck come out the next day. Very, very expensive for her, and the car was never the same again. So, I mean, if you really want to go out somewhere like that, just leave your car at the side of the road and walk out. There's no point in driving where it's going to be dangerous. So as I said, she couldn't get her car out till the next day, so we took her to a hotel. While we were on the way to the hotel, we saw some lightning close to the Mission off I-19. And this is where I got this photo. And she was next to me. She had all her gear. So I'm hoping that the experience of being able to set up while she was waiting for her car to be rescued made her experience a little less traumatic. But again, this is a photo that I sold a couple of prints of. My friend next to me, she was shooting with a different lens and she got more of the bolt, but mine was closer in. And again, that's the thing, when you're shooting with somebody, you might both get the same thing, but different lenses, different timing, different editing, they all make for their own personality of shot. And the radar again shows the lightning was getting pretty close to us, less than a mile away at that point. So we got back in the car and we found a hotel for her. This is the first photo I ever got that did well in a contest. It's the American Meteorological Society's Weather Band Photo Contest. It was a finalist in 2023. As you can see from the main photo, it looks, nice, isolated, out in the middle of the desert, nothing around. But actually from that inset photo, you can see there was a whole bunch of other people there with their cameras and their tripods. And they probably also got that same bolt. That storm actually gave me 30 photos that were worth editing. So many bolts out of that storm. So that was a great experience, and a great community experience too, because there were people in that group who'd come from all over the country, all over the world. They were on a tour group. And so it was good to talk to them because most of them had never experienced monsoon before. This is another example of community. There's a spot, a little hill down in Vale that we call Rena's spot, after a storm chaser called Rena Giola. She lives just around the corner from it, so she's often there catching storms, and so it became known as Rena's spot. And the fame of Rena Spot spread so much that this night, when we drove up that little hill, we found two other storm chasers from Colorado who knew about Rena Spot. They'd come down to Arizona for Monsoon, all the way from Colorado, and we were all set up. And when I edited this photo and posted it to the group later that evening, I noticed someone else had almost the same photo. You can see edited a little bit differently and a little bit further away from the bolt. And I said, "Oh, well, we were right there too." And she said, "Oh yeah, you're in my shot. I just edited you out." And then she sent me where she edited us out. That's our vehicles all lit up there, just a little bit closer to that bolt. And and it was actually Rena sitting in her truck from Rena Spot. And she said, "I was so worried. I thought it struck you guys. And if you zoom in, you can see it looks like it struck right where we were. But in fact, we were not much closer to it than she was. Distance can be very deceiving. I don't normally drive too far from home when I'm chasing alone, but in this case, I was with a friend and we drove all the way up to I-8 south of Phoenix. So this is the Veckle Valley Road exit. I'm going to be showing you some of the goals that people go for. One of the goals is rainbow plus lightning. And this was a great example of that. And if you look down at the radar here, you can see a lot more red dots. These are all the storm chasers who live in Phoenix, who were like a little late to the party, I think. They were all behind us. We got the best spot. We're out of the rain. That was a good evening. And after that happened, other way. There we go. We went a little bit further towards Stanfield and we got this shot, which is pretty late at night. This is called a crawler. Normally, if lightning touches down, we call it cloud to ground, but we call these ones crawlers because they seem to crawl out of the clouds straight for you. And this is down on the right here is where I took a picture with my cell phone of my setup. After dark, you don't need a lightning trigger. Oops, other way. You don't need a lightning trigger. You just leave the shutter open for, in this case, 20 seconds, and chances are that lightning is going to happen. And the red light just shows that the shutter is open, so you don't forget. But that was a great night or great day. We chased for several hours and got so many good shots. Closer to home again, Casino del Sol. It's right in my neighborhood. Probably the best sunset I've captured lightning in. I was so excited that I immediately switched my camera to playback to see if I got it, and I got it, and I took a picture of the back of the camera. It's very common for people when they get excited to take a picture of the back of the camera and then send it to all their friends, and then their friends can excitedly wait the edited version. This was about 5.5 miles away. Again, good distance, safe enough. I'm out of the rain. Once you start feeling raindrops, probably time to pack up and move somewhere else. This is my second award-winning shot. It was a fairly small photo contest run by the University of Arizona's Water Resources Research Center. And in 2023, this won the nature category. Any of you who live on the east side of Tucson may have experienced this storm on July 28th. It caused a lot of damage, a lot of insurance claims, huge hail. You can see that. The pale color of that indicates that it's a lot of hail in it rather than just rain. I was a little late to this. Some people have photos that have rainbows and lightning. I just have the rain falling, but it's still a great photo in my mind. See, over on the radar here, we have a little icon. That doesn't mean there's a tornado. It just means that there's rotation in the storm, that the winds aren't going straight. The winds are rotating. not to cause a tornado, but it just is a good indication of the severity of the storm. In this main photo, you can see someone down here walking towards me. That's my friend Donna, who had already got everything that she wanted to get, and she packed up and she was headed back to her car. So I was really late. But that was a day that a lot of people in Tucson will remember. Again, this radar down here, this white gray area indicates there was so much of that vertically integrated liquid that the radar couldn't even estimate. It maxed out. It was like, well, there's so much I can't measure it all. It was a storm to remember for sure. Those of you who read the intro to this presentation will know that I also work at the Desert Museum. This is one photo I took during their Cool Summer Nights program. And it has that goal of lightning and rainbow and a bonus of saguaros in there. And there's somebody taking a photo of the sunset on her phone, totally oblivious to the storm that's going on to her left. This was about 9 miles away. Maybe I would have liked it a little bit closer, but you know, you take what you can get. I was working, I couldn't leave the museum, so still a great photo. And that does get the whole rainbow in there. After I left that night, about 9 o'clock, another friend texted me that she was at Gates Pass, getting more of the storm. Here's a great example of a crawler. It's obviously on the other side of Gates Pass to the east, so right over the city. And there you can see the trail of red lights of cars going up Gates Pass. This was a 15-second exposure. So that's all the cars going home after being at the museum for the evening. But I love how this has kind of an otherworldly feel to it. This is probably my favorite experience ever. And I didn't even have to drive. This is right in the desert, right behind my house. I set up, had my cell phone out. I wanted to take a picture of the camera, and I was trying to take a picture when the lightning happened, and I got very lucky in that I took a picture of the camera when the lightning was happening, and that my reflexes aren't that good, but I just got very lucky. About 6 miles away. And I think this is a good photo that shows the lightning trigger. You can see the red light on the camera means that the trigger has triggered the camera to take a shot. And this is the shot it got. We're back to the casino. Again, it's close to home, so it's very easy for me to make it up there when there's a storm. I love the colors in this photo. The storm was quite a ways to the south, but you'll see up here there's some lightning that has jumped out ahead of the storm. It's really close to me. Not where my camera was pointing. But you'll see here, what I've done is I've left the cameras out and I've jumped in the back of my car. I want to note that being in the car makes you safe as long as all the doors and windows are closed. It's the Faraday cage effect. Here, the back is open, so it's not actually making me safe, but it makes me feel safe. And plus, I don't get rained on that way. We're getting even closer to home. This was taken from my backyard. Minutes earlier, I'd been relaxing in my hot tub, realizing that being in a hot tub when there was a storm is not a good idea. Don't go swimming in the lake when there's a storm. Don't go near any body of water where there's a storm, because obviously electricity can travel through water. So I got out of the hot tub, set up the camera, and this is taken from my backyard. So you don't have to be the chase part of a storm chaser. You can be a storm observer even if you never leave home. Last year. Last year wasn't a great monsoon, but I got a few good Good shots. I like this one, again, from the casino. I like the sun lighting up the foreground and Black Mountain there. We can see from the radar that the storm was literally everywhere. You could point your camera in any direction and you'd get something. I got something. But yeah, sometimes when the storm is all around you, it can be frustrating if you're pointing in one direction and then the lightning's off to the other side, and you turn your camera, and then the lighting's back where you were pointing. But in this case, didn't really matter. It was happening everywhere. This is in my neighborhood. This is where our HOA tried to set up a children's playground, but it floods during monsoon, so it becomes a lake. But I like this one because down at the bottom here, you just have a little bit of a reflection. And I like that. I'm working on getting more reflection shots. And in fact, I did take a little video of this just to give you an idea of what it's like to be out there. If you watch on the left-hand side, there, I'll just do that one more time if I can. There we go. Just watch that rain shaft on the left and you'll see the lightning come down through it. That's just a little bit of what it's like to experience. One of my goals I haven't met yet is having lightning strike the Kitt Peak Observatory. You'll see the observatory is over here on the left. The lightning's over there on the right. That's as close as I've got so far. This year I'll be trying again, standing there for an hour or two while the storm goes by and hoping it actually hits the observatory, which I know it does because I've seen other people get photos, just not me yet. I don't often take photos with man-made or building structures in the foreground, but I like this one. I like the uplit palm trees. I like the casino's hotel structure. And as you can see from the radar, the storm was happening sort of mid-town, but I'm way over the other side of I-10. But it's still so dramatic just to watch it, 10, 12 miles away. So I just love the composition of that photo. And then winding down, this is the last photo I took of the last season, 2024. August 31st, we didn't have monsoon even really go into September. This was down by 3 points. Southwest of Tucson. If we look at the radar, everything was getting a little bit close. There's a red dot there. These were people who were trying to catch up with me. They could see my red dot and I could see them coming down. Unfortunately, by the time they got to me, the storm was pretty much over. One thing about monsoon storms is sometimes they don't last very long. If you're 5 minutes late to your spot, you could miss everything. And we often do. And that's it for me.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Dave, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, let's see if we'll try this again.
There'll be some time, by the way, sometime after the presentations to ask questions if you have any specific questions about being a storm chaser.
Let's see, share. So what are you seeing?
Oh,
All right.
you got it. It
All right.
worked.
Hooray. So, yeah, I'm David Eisenberg. I'm a native Tucsonan. I have loved the storms here. The Sonoran Desert is magnificent. This is just a great place to experience a monsoon. And I've been taking pictures since I was an adolescent. So maybe 60 years, close to it. We have just incredible storms and a big, beautiful sky. So, you know, I took this picture in about 1970 of a good friend of mine. We were up on Mount Lemmon, I think at Geology Vista. We climbed up on a big boulder, and about the same time that my friend said to me, "Hey, your hair is standing up." I said, "Hey, your hair is standing up." And as I was taking this picture of him, I was struck, fortunately, by the thought that we were likely about to be struck by lightning, and which I pointed out, and we scrambled down off of that rock, ran back to the car as lightning started getting all over the place. So if you notice your hair standing up or someone else's, you're in the wrong place. And also, one of the things is we have this tendency to drive off, into these places to get great shots. And the storms, there's already a significant risk of flash flooding and driving, onto roads or through previously dry washes that are now torrents. So pay attention to like your escape route, or know that you may have to wait a while to be able to drive back the way you came, if there's enough rain. And it's getting more intense as the climate warms. So for a long time, I had thought that this was my very first lightning photograph taken. I was driving from Columbus, Ohio, back to Tucson. This was outside of Dalhart, Texas, in the Texas Panhandle. But the other day, I dragged out the negatives and discovered that this is actually my first lightning picture, taken that same day. And I don't know where it was, because I was driving across Kansas and then across the Oklahoma Panhandle and into the Texas Panhandle. And this was sometime in the afternoon. And unlike with digital cameras, there's no record of what time or what day or what the camera settings are. And I have to admit that my memory is a little thin all these years, decades later. But there I was out on the plains somewhere, and I got that picture. And then these were other pictures that I took that were on that same roll of Kodak Tri-X Pan black and white ASA 400 film. So it was an intense storm. And I took these pictures. I didn't have a tripod. I drove around. I saw that windmill. I drove around to where the wind and the rain were blowing from the opposite side of the driver's side of the car. And I rolled down the window and I held the camera on the door, basically, and held the shutter open until I thought I caught something worth seeing. And I got a few pretty interesting photographs. Jumping ahead about 40 years to 2011, I took this picture from the roof of the house where my nonprofit office has been, in Pueblo Gardens here in Tucson, looking south, handheld, 125th of a second. And part luck, but I was also trying to capture lightning, and there was a good bit of it. And sometimes you get bolts that last for more than a second because there are multiple strokes. And I've had some success in capturing some of those, but when I say some, I mean only some. It's way easier at night. You can do long exposures. Like this was a 20-second exposure. This is the same bolt that Liz showed of, you can see the Gates Pass Road with cars on it there. And I was in a little different position than she was. But shooting at night is, shooting lightning at night is much simpler than during the day. I was lucky. I probably shot 50 images of this sunset, and I managed to capture 3 bolts. And of course, oh, and I want to show you this little video, it's short, it's low quality, shot with my iPhone, but it's of a bolt that is striking near the west end of the Catalinas. And this was a few hours, some hours after the bolt that started the Bighorn fire that burned through the summer of 2020 for like a month and a half, burned most of the way across the north side of the Catalinas. Also, that yellow arrow points to a light, and in the video, it looks like it's blinking off and on, but it's just the alternating current, 60 cycles a second. So each blink is a 60th of a second. And I will show this video. And you can see all those leaders, and then a bolt, and then another bolt that just blows out the image, and another one. And then it takes a little while for this last strike for the air to cool off, because basically a lightning bolt heats the air to about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, about 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. But there's that little light blinking away. There's about 50 blinks in that little video. So that whole thing, that episode took place in 5/6 of a second. But the cool thing is you get to see all those little branches, we call them leaders. And they are the energy looking for a path to discharge the differential positive and negative charges. Now, this was the first picture I ever took with a lightning trigger. And triggers are really pretty cool. And they don't work by sensing light, they sense heat. And the heat that's in those leaders is sufficient to trigger the device, which is connected to your camera and releases the shutter. So I ordered this trigger in the spring, and it came in the fall. And so at the very end of the monsoon season. So this was one of very few lightning pictures I got with that trigger in that first year. One of the really interesting things about triggers is sometimes if there's enough separation in time, one of my triggers would actually take 2 images at about a 1/6 of a second. That's how I had my camera set up. And Liz said something about, driving to storms and having them be done by the time you get there. And that happened a lot. So I figured out how to set up my camera with a trigger on the dashboard of my car so that at least I might catch some shots, some bolts while I was driving to a storm that may or may not let me take pictures when I get there. But one of the interesting things is that trigger sometimes would have these 2 images. And the first image, you would see leaders and, weaker parts. And the second image always showed just the main bolt, and lightning bolts they have multiple strokes almost always. And so sometimes you get to see that. And here in this image, this was also taken the same way with a trigger on my camera. I was driving, you can see the shadow of my windshield wiper there. And because I was moving, and so the camera was moving, it actually captured some of that difference in strokes. And you can see not all those strokes are the same. So they weren't all there at the same time. Just an interesting little thing that you rarely get to see, with your naked eyes. And triggers let you do things like, hooray, I finally got a lightning and rainbow picture with saguaro cactus, etc. Just a nicely illuminated foreground, like Liz was talking about, nice color. So triggers are great for shooting during the day. And here's another, this was off Twin Peaks Road on the other side of the end of the Tucson mountains. And the storm was approaching, and I set up a couple of cameras, and they were shooting lightning, and then the lightning was getting closer, and then it started raining, and you can see in that bottom right image that there are already some drops of water on the lens when that bolt hit a few hundred yards away, and I was already about to take that camera down and get in my car. So I caught that bolt, but it was scary close. And then this is at Casino del Sol, one of Liz's favorite places. And this is a bolt that she caught also. I didn't realize she was there because she already sanely had gotten into her car, left her tripod set up. I got there, I set up, I got this approaching storm, and the light and the color was amazing. I got set up, this bolt happened. I realized this was probably a dangerous place to be. I was about to take my camera down when another bolt happened behind me. When the leaders of a bolt show up at the top, only the top of one of your images, it means that the bolt is happening behind you, beside you. Anyway, you shouldn't be where you are. It's a good sign to get in your car and maybe go someplace else. Similar thing happened here. The storm was approaching. The lightning was a nice distance away. I was under the back hatch of my Toyota Highlander, feeling a little bit protected, but mostly to keep the rain off. But it hadn't started raining yet. I caught this bolt, an 8-second exposure. And before that exposure was done, another bolt hit behind me. And you can see that leader from that other bolt. So back in the car. What's happening? There we go. So I had this great idea to use one camera to take a picture, sort of like what Liz was talking about, taking a picture of my camera, taking a picture of lightning at a parking garage near the football stadium at the U of A. And so I got this wonderful picture. There's the picture that the camera took. And shortly after this, I was packing up. The storm was pretty much done. Ray was at that parking garage, and he came by, and he took a picture of me taking my cameras and tripods back to my car. And then he went home and photoshopped that lightning in behind me and sent it to me. That's what your good friends do for you. This was another shot from, I think, the Highland Street parking garage near the university, taken last year. And that bolt struck somewhere probably near the U of A stadium. It's on the other side of the building on Speedway that houses the University of Arizona Foundation and other organizations there. But you can see in this 20-second or 15-second exposure, there was another bolt way down towards Florida or Green Valley in the lower right corner. Sometimes you get lucky and get more than what you're thinking about getting. And these are just some images I like. The one on the left, you can see some stars up above. I love it when you can see a bolt above the clouds and then through the clouds and then coming out of the bottom of the clouds. And kind of lighting up the bottom of the clouds. This is another really fabulous bolt that was um, uh, northwest of Tucson. This is one taken from the parking garage at Tucson Medical Center, a favorite spot for storm chasers to gather when the storms are in the right place. I like it. It kind of looks like a giant stepping down out of the mountains down into the foothills. And then Liz was talking about reflections, and I'm always trying to figure out how I might get lucky enough to have the lightning cooperate with where I want it to show up to get a reflection. Here's another one where you can kind of see the size of the storm, but you can also see all those stars. And there's even a little window there to the right of the illuminated clouds where you can see through and see stars as well as up above. And then this was a bolt, a gigantic bolt that storm chasers all over the valley captured from a lot of different angles. This thing was huge. One of those crawlers that was a cloud to cloud or cloud to air, not cloud to ground, but it was gigantic. And this is, let's see, hopefully it'll show. So this is a little time lapse I put together. And the reason I'm showing it is look at the rotation that you can see in the clouds. When I was taking all these pictures over, a half an hour or so, I didn't notice any rotation, but it's pretty pronounced here and really interesting. And then we were up, my wife and I went up to Phoenix to visit a friend who was attending a conference or training up there. And while we were up there, I took my camera stuff with me because it was monsoon time. While we were there, this amazing storm hit, and I was wandering around this resort looking for sheltered places that I could capture lightning. And I always love when you can see the strike point and it like lights up everything around it. And so I looked actually yesterday, this bolt was about a little under half a mile where it struck from where I was. But I was, under a covered, sort of walkway at that hotel. And here's kind of an iconic shot from the Tucson mountains looking west, and a crawler and saguaros. And nicely, sometimes the lightning cooperates with your idea of what would make a good photograph. And this is one of those. And so, yeah, I saw this a couple of years ago, a cloud that was a big question mark. So I had to photograph it. And we'll have time for questions after Ray gives his presentation. So I'll stop sharing. I'm so glad that worked.
Yay. Good job. I suppose it's, see, I'll share my whole screen just in case.
All right, Ray.
Is it working?
Yeah,
It is.
that's good.
All right. So, hi, I'm Ray Cleveland. I'm a professional photographer here in Tucson, Arizona. I mostly do real estate photography and portraits, but my favorite genres are storm photography and astrophotography. And I put together this presentation of my journey with storm photography, and I figured this cover image here would be exemplary of the experience. This is a parking garage night where the storm was a little bit above us, so I am below the top of the parking garage and safe mostly from the lightning. And I set up my camera that took this photo on top of my car. You could kind of see some of the reflection of the lightning on the car, and this is a 100% real photo. is just really neat moment. But yeah, so I'll start from the beginning. Growing up in Tucson, I always loved watching thunderstorms and aspired to get a photo of some lightning. And in July 4th, 2006, I captured my first ever photo of lightning. I is a 2-second handheld exposure with an Olympus point and shoot camera during the 4th of July, as you could see. My intent was to try to get long exposures that look really cool of some fireworks, and a happy accident caught a bolt of lightning. And in a little bit, I started to get a little bit more intentional about it. And in 2009, I had now owned a DSLR, but I didn't own a tripod yet. And I was starting to learn about long exposures, that I could capture lightning that way. And I set my camera propped up on a table looking up into the sky, and I captured my second ever photo of lightning. And then within the next few years, it was very much a hobby. Just whenever there was a storm, I'd try to capture some bolts, and did some backyard storm chasing. The view from my backyard is not the greatest, but I managed to capture bit of lightning. And a theme between these is that these bolts are not in focus because they didn't quite know how to focus on lightning yet. This is one's probably one of the most tragic. Is it's such an insane bolt of lightning with awesome puddle reflection and everything, but this entire photo is completely out of focus. And then a few years later, in 2014, I went on a trip to Yellowstone, and I started taking photography seriously. And I put myself on the Instagram 365-day challenge to post and create a new photo every single day for an entire year. And through practice, I learned a lot. I started getting out of the house and going on a lot more photo adventures, and I learned a lot of common photo settings for storms, like a higher f-stop or lower, like f8 or so the lightning doesn't blow out the camera, long exposures for nighttime lightning. And I also learned how to focus properly for lightning to infinity, which one of my favorite tricks is if you use the live view in the back of the camera and zoom it in on, say, a star or a light in the city and try to make it as small as possible. That's how to focus in infinity in a dark situation. And 2015, I start chasing storms outside of the backyard, getting out into town, going on storm adventures. I discovered parking garages are great overlooks, and also other great overlooks around town. I just start scouting and looking for spots to capture lightning. Here is a storm from Sabino Canyon in 2015, and I stacked all the lightning from this. This is probably about 30 minutes of exposures from the same spot with the camera, where I took all of the photos of the lightning and stacked them together in Photoshop. I was able to blend all the light from the brightest images. And this photo is actually used for the Park Pass a few years back. But here's a moment where the lightning above me caused a lens flare, and that is a really great moment to get out of there. This was not a good spot to be this close to the storm because I was a little ways from the car, and having to run back with a car basically carrying a tripod / lightning rod is not the best advice. I've been trying to chase further away from storms and a bit safer now, i.e. parking garages and the like. And this right here looks really close, but it was pretty zoomed in. The storm was pretty far away from us from Mount Lemmon in 2016. This was an amazing night. This right here is a single photo. I believe it's about a 30-second exposure. And then looking the other direction, there is a very active storm over Tucson. This is from Babat Duag on Mount Lemmon. And this is a stacked photo of about 45 minutes or so of the storm from the time lapse. And it's just a really good example of just showing the entire show in one image. And around then I had joined the Tucson Storm Chasers group. And we started bumping into each other a lot and sometimes coordinating meetups. This was at a parking garage where we all treated to an amazing lightning show. And I was starting to run around with 2 cameras this time. And I had set up one camera to capture all of us with our cameras set up on the ledge here, taking pictures. And this is just kind of a great glimpse of behind the scenes of what it's like to chase with friends and everything. It's so much fun and very exciting to going back and forth to see what everybody has caught. And as Liz mentioned earlier, we do all have different editing styles and perspectives, and it's really interesting to see how somebody else captures the same bolt of lightning. And just a few success stories, which, by the way, they're like not every storm chase is successful. There are like some of the times you go out and get skunked or something, but it's just the pursuit is always fun, and I always recommend going out to go watch it. But yeah, here's a few successful images I've captured here. This one is in 2017. Just a bolt of lightning behind the buildings in downtown Tucson. I thought looked really cool. This is Saguaro National Park 2018. One of my favorite saguaros back there. And then this is another stacked image of downtown Tucson in 2018. This was probably the best storm night I've had to date, where it was just the whole night. There was just bolt after bolt after bolt. And this is one stacked image. And I have another stacked image. So I had 2 cameras. This was my older camera pointing downtown, and my newer camera was pointing at the stadium at U of A. And this is probably one of my most popular images I've created, of just stacking the storm here. This was, I think 15-minute time lapse was all it took for it to get this much lightning. It was really crazy night. And this was my first night testing my lightning sensor trigger that I purchased. I got a Myops trigger, which essentially it senses some of, I believe, some of the infrared that's produced before lightning strikes and triggers the camera. This particular scene, it wasn't necessary to use a lightning trigger because it is nighttime. I could have just done a lot of long exposures, but this was a great test. And also, this is part of the theme as I start trying to chase storms with more like iconic foreground. Like, this is a very great place to I mean, it's a bit of a sketchy place to be capturing lightning, to be honest, but here's a little bit of behind the scenes video. You can kind of see the trigger on my camera there. I captured this on my phone. And let's see, go to the next one. And part of the now having a lightning trigger is I would have an easier time capturing lightning during sunset, which normally would take so much trial and error. Now you could set up a camera trigger and that senses the lightning and it'll capture it when it happens, which is you can really yield some pretty amazing images with a trigger. This right here is West Tucson 2019. This was just a pretty scene I figured I'd share. It was twilight and a storm off in the distance. This is Picacho Peak in 2020, sunset and some lightning. Again, probably another image that I would have had a harder time capturing without a lightning trigger, although it was a bit darker here. And in 2020, I've had my first successful rainbow and lightning photo. This was out in Texas Canyon, really beautiful place, kind of between Tucson and Wilcox, well, a little closer to Wilcox. And also again in 2020, I struck again some lightning and rainbow. And in 2021, I captured this. This was probably the last photo I took of this crested saguaro. It was not doing too hot at this moment, but it was really awesome to see. It kind of reminds me of like almost like a Frankenstein's monster type thing or something, or like maybe it's Medusa. I think a lot of people affectionately called this saguaro because it almost looks like the crown of snakes or something. But I really, one of my favorite storm images I've ever captured. This one has a pretty cool story. This was also, Liz mentioned Rena's spot, which was, I think this was the first night I ever discovered that spot. And I was chasing a storm out to Sonoyta area, and that storm had dissipated, and I set up near the spot and just was looking to see if any more storms were forming. And I basically watched this storm, the rain start from this one. And I guess kind of the moral of the story is like you could be out there chasing one storm, and with the beauty of the monsoons, another storm can form in the distance, and you could be treated to a show. And it's just the benefit of being out there is that great. And I also really love this shot. You could see the strike points, and you could kind of see it illuminating the clouds up here, and also sunset. It was an incredible sunset. It's lighting up the rain here. Here's one I captured in Tubac in 2021. It was a very electric sky in the background here, and again trying to pursue getting some lightning photos in iconic locations. Here's an example of some lightning with stars, which is really hard to capture. Like the dynamic range is pretty nuts between the brightness of lightning and how versus the brightness of starlight. But this is also out in Marsh Station, which is an exit off of I-10. There's not really anything there, but when there's storms going on, there's usually a few storm chasers out there. I've bumped into quite a few pretty awesome storm chasers out that way on a good monsoon evening. This was another really lucky shot. I was out downtown Tucson in 2022, set up my tripod, and wasn't the most active lightning storm, but there was a flash every few minutes or so. So I just had my camera set up and got really lucky with this bolt of lightning striking while my camera was set up. And it was starting to rain on us a little bit. You could see this big hexagon here is basically refraction from a raindrop on my lens. And there's also a little one right here too. And here's another example of meeting up with other storm chasers. We didn't arrange this one at all. I was driving around with my buddy Jesse here. We were chasing out near Marana, and we drove down Park Links Road because there's a lot of great just views out there, good desert. And stumbled across, drove by, and there's a small dirt parking lot and a bunch of people set up with cameras, and we wound up joining them for a few minutes. And I set up one of my cameras as a behind the scenes, and it captured all of these bolts of lightning from behind everybody. This I think was a 50 millimeter lens, so the lightning was a little bit further away than it appears here, but it's still was a really awesome moment. Granted, we had to run away from the storm pretty soon after this was taken. And here's probably one of my favorite lightning photos that I've captured last year. This was 200 millimeters. I've at my 200 millimeter lens like focused on downtown Tucson skyline, and I had it pointed in this composition, and it was like reviewing the entire time lapse is very shaky, but there were a few very lucky photos where lightning struck right in the middle of the composition. And this is probably one of my favorite ever storm photos. And a few time lapses to share. Since 2015, I've been capturing time lapses of storms, and what they are is they're made up of a sequence of photos that I edit together to make a video. So I set up my camera to take an interval of like maybe every 10 seconds or so, take a picture, and I put them together into a video, and it really allows you to look at the motion of a storm and gives you a good perspective of the weather. And here's just a few of my favorites that I put together in a short couple-minute video. This is out on Mount Lemmon. Here's a good example of the rain starting to come down during the sunset. Here's a Picacho Peak. You can see the wind moving around all the cholla cactus, and also the wind moving around the saguaros here. Yeah, that's Hacienda del Sol, I believe, right there. In Saguaro National Park. And this one's kind of like a flag sunset with all the rays. And here's twilight to nighttime with a storm coming in on the west side. It's a mountain. And here's the time lapse from out at Mount Lemmon on Babad Duag. Just beautiful view. Some lightning coming in with some rain. And here's the stadium. Just nice to see the storm evolve. And well, this is the end of a storm one night. And here's some more stars with lightning. And then a crested saguaro. And that's my YouTube if anybody wants to watch future time lapses. And also, last year I attempted to create a storm chasing series where I started to take more behind the scenes video and captured a few run-ins with other chasers and included a few of the time lapses. And I put together a short like clip of a couple of my storm chasing from some of my storm chasing videos. That's that hailstorm, the same one Liz shared, July 28th. And here's the hail when it passed over me. I was in my car here. But it was pretty intense. And then after the storm passed by, this was the scene. Just a bunch of other people with their tripods set up, capturing the lightning and sunset. And here's a real-time video of the lightning from that same storm when off in the distance. where it really almost looks like as fast as the time lapses, where it's just very electric, very active storm. Here's from another video I did out in Sonoyta. Some of there's one of the bolts I was fortunate enough to capture on video there. And then here's the time lapse I captured, it was such a beautiful scene out there. And then another one from Marana. This is where we ran into those other chasers after. This is what we were chasing before we ran into them. We were out in the desert trying to get some rainbow, which we got a little bit of rainbow lightning there. And unfortunately, the sun got obscured, so the rainbow didn't stick around the whole way through. But yeah, here's us running into those other folks. This camera made it look a lot darker because I think I was using a GoPro. Yeah, some of the behind the scenes of what it was like out there. And there's the time lapse, the non-stacked version. Like you could see somebody celebrating. And that's here's another episode where I did San Javier. It started raining on us a little bit, so I had an umbrella, but we were lucky enough to where we were just surrounded and mostly dry. But it was a just beautiful scene out there. Just some of the lightning over here. And then you could see the lightning over in this angle a little bit better, actually. But the color was incredible. And I don't know why it takes it out of full screen for that, but and that's my presentation. If you want to see any more of my adventures, on my website's raycleveland.com. I've got all my Instagram and stuff up there. And also, if you want to join in on the chase, official Tucson Storm Chasers, a very good resource in the Facebook group. And yeah,
Wow.
thanks for listening.
The three of you are just incredible. Just amazing. I've seen it. I can do it one more time, actually. I could do one more go through. And it makes me so excited. I mean, watching outside looking for clouds and wind. And you know what really amazes me when you do the time lapse, how much lightning is around us during a storm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You see a big one and go, wow, but all around you are these storms. Anyway, any questions? Any questions of our photographers? Oh,
Oh, thanks, Wendy.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
Mhm.
I have a question. I'm curious about how expensive these cameras are that you're using.
Oh. The one I use is quite expensive. I think I spent $2,500 on it. That's just for the camera. The lenses are even more. But I'm also a professional photographer, so it's a justified expense. You can get away with using much cheaper cameras. You could use the basic Rebel camera with a tripod, like a entry level. You can also use your phone. I completely forgot about mentioning that there are apps out there that allow you to capture lightning with your phone. One of my favorite is called the Lightning app, or Lightning Camera on Android. I think there's one on iPhone as well. But basically what that app does is it records a constant video of whatever your camera is seeing. And when you see lightning, you press the capture button. and you can review everything that the camera has seen in the past few seconds, and you could save the photo of the lightning. Granted, it doesn't work as well as the bigger cameras, but it's still pretty fun to try that. And more budget option.
Thank you.
You know, I've been using some pretty good, but you know, I mean, my first digital camera, you know, was a Canon XSI, which I think I
Mhm.
bought in 2008 maybe. And I think I paid about $700 or $800 for that camera.
Sounds
You
about right.
It's not
Mhm.
it's not a bad camera, even all these years later. So some of those older cameras you can pick up pretty cheaply used, and
Mhm.
Canon makes a lot of good, you know, less expensive cameras. A good tripod helps, especially if you're shooting, you know, lightning or storms or shooting at night. You need some way, you know, to have the camera be steady. And they also make some really nice tripod adapters for phones, because the same is true for I mean, some of the software for phones actually has some pretty good stabilization features that sort of compensate for movement. Um, but really, um, you don't need a super expensive setup to to capture really good images.
No.
And you know, there are some people, there's a few in the Storm Chasers group, but there are people who you know, are happy to help teach. And that's one of the, you know, the basics. It's one of the nice things about the Storm Chasers group is that there are a lot of people who are, you know, happy to help people. And I know all of us, when we're out shooting and other people show up, there's a lot of camaraderie and just a kind of openness about it's not there's a competitive level, I guess, for some people in some ways. But I think most of us just are happy to help people figure out how to do it, and with whatever they have.
Yeah, I would say that any camera where you can adjust your shutter speed, that's the important thing, and hopefully aperture and ISO as well. You can get like they said an entry level for $500-600. Usually comes with a lens. Pretty much any lens will work. Tripod. A heavier tripod is better because then it doesn't sway in the wind, but anything that keeps your camera steady will do. If you want to do the daytime shots and you want the lightning trigger, they're probably between about $200 to $400, depending on quality. Some work better than others. Some of the cheap ones work better than some of the expensive ones. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to set out today, I'd say you could set out under $1,000 with a beginner starter kit.
Mhm.
You know, we got a tip on the lightning camera apps are great for daytime bolts, for capturing daytime bolts. And then I don't know how to pronounce it, but a carbon fiber tripods
Yeah,
are
they're expensive, but they're what's really nice about them is they're light. You can, you know,
Yeah.
um, and you know, one of the things, it's nice to have a heavier tripod when the wind's blowing, but it's nice to have a lighter tripod that you can hang a weight from. So like a lot of times people will have like a you know, a bag or something that you can hook on, you know, to the tripod to weight it down. So you can just pick up a rock or rocks, you know, you don't have to necessarily carry heavy stuff around with you.
Yeah, if you're shopping for one, I think they're called stone bags, where you strap it to the tripod and put weights in.
Yeah, and you know, we've all, I suspect, had I certainly have, and I know Ray has had
Mhm.
tripods all over.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I have insurance for my camera equipment, so I had a couple of tripods set up in a parking garage at the university, and an incredible amount of wind came through, and I was
Mm.
holding on to one of my lighter tripod, thinking that my heavier tripod would be okay, and it wasn't, and it fell, and it wrecked a lens and a pretty decent camera, which fortunately my equipment insurance replaced. That was wonderful.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mhm.
It was a terrible thing to, at the time I was just like,
Yeah. In my experience, when it blows over, if you're insured, you're like, oh, I can replace the camera and the lens, but is the memory card okay? Can I recover the photos?
yeah,
Those things are like the black box from the
Yeah,
from the wreckage of the camera.
exactly.
years ago I had we took a trip to California, um, and we came back over Tioga Pass in Yosemite, and it was the last day that the road was open before they closed it for the winter, and Tioga Lake was frozen, and it was right at sunset. And I went out, and I had a Leica M2, a very nice rangefinder camera. Anyway, I shot a couple of rolls of film out on the lake. I walked out on the frozen lake at sunset and shot all these pictures. And then we came home, we got home the next day, or maybe that night. I don't really remember, but the next day, the day after we got home, someone broke into our house and stole a bunch of stuff, including all my camera gear,
Oh,
including all the photographs I had taken.
Oh,
oh, how awful.
And insurance, paid. My Leica was very much underinsured, but I got enough money to buy a Canon A1 film camera and 3 lenses, which I used for at least a dozen years, maybe more. A real workhorse camera and some great glass. And then I started doing digital. And it's interesting, the early on the film cameras had better lenses because the resolution of the early digital was not as high as the resolution of good film. And then it took a few years, and then the digital lenses, the lenses for digital cameras, like Canon and Nikon were the main, and still are the main two. Although, Sony, there are a bunch of
Sony's encroaching on them for sure.
yeah,
there are a
it's
whole bunch of,
well,
now they have all these mirrorless cameras that are amazing digital cameras, which I don't have. I'm still using my old Canon 6D and a 70D, and they're good
oh,
cameras. And a 7D, they still work great.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Doing-
For what we do, they're perfectly adequate.
And it's interesting, there's some basic things about photography that you learn over the years, things like focus and depth of field, the size of the aperture, the f-stop. Basically, the smaller the aperture is, the greater the depth of field. In other words, the more things will be in focus. And so when you're
Mhm.
shooting with your lens wide open, it has a shallower depth of field. Getting the focus right can be more critical, when at that point. And of course, at night you're often shooting that way. So during the day, if the lens is stopped way down, you have a lot of leeway in focus. Um, and the other thing is, if you're trying to get lightning during the day, you end up needing really short exposures, unlike at night where you can have long ones. And so some people use what they call neutral density filters, which basically just block a bunch of the light so that you can have a longer exposure even when it's really bright. Um, I think they tend to distort things a little bit, although the really expensive ones are better in terms of color and not degrading the sharpness. But it's all fun, you know. And you just keep learning things. When I first started shooting lightning, I shot some really long exposures, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And what happens with digital cameras is you start getting what they call hot pixels. The
Hot pickles.
yeah, hot pixels.
Yeah.
The sensor heats up if you're shooting a lot, and so you start getting these little points of light that you have to then take time and after processing to get rid of. So then I thought, okay, well, I guess shorter exposures probably make more sense, and lots of them.
We have a question. What are some of the best daytime spots to get a raised view above cactus, houses, and etc. in the Tucson area?
Oh, it's tough. I mean, Saguaro National Park, east and west, but you still have to hunt for those raised spots, but that still give you that open view. It's not easy.
There's some at the visitors center at Saguaro West. There's like this observation deck that's on the west side of the visitors center, and it has pretty good views, to the to the southwest and to the west. They're a little bit limited to the northwest and very limited to anything north or east. But you actually get a pretty nice view. And I've actually a couple of times when storms happen, I've gone underneath that observation deck and shot a few times from there, but it's even more limited because it's lower. And of course the mountains, if the storm's not there, it can be really scary to be at one of those lookouts. Because the storms can come from behind you. You're looking out at the city, and following, what's happening out there, and everything seems nice and far away. And then if you're not paying attention to your phone and the radar, you don't realize that there's a nice storm brewing up right overhead. And that can be a really scary place. As that, I had my early scary experience on that with lightning. So it's but some of us habitually sort of scout out as we're driving around town. I go, oh, there's a building with a public outside staircase that you could go up to the second or third floor on like a little kind of balcony, and you could shoot storms. I've also been thinking about some of those buildings on the east side of town on Wilmot that are have all that reflective glass. And I've been thinking about trying to shoot lightning reflections off of those buildings.
Yeah, I try when I'm driving around, even when there aren't storms, to look for spots, and then I use Google Maps pin and save feature to pin them for when storms arrive. I'm going to see if I can share my map right now. So
Yeah,
each one of those little turquoise things is a place that has a view.
wow.
And so when storms are here, then you have a quick way of, oh yeah, there's a place right around the corner, rather than having to remember.
Yeah, Lori Bailey who's an incredible storm chaser. I think of her as sort of the godmother of the storm chasers group here. She has a map all over southeastern or southern Arizona and beyond, with very similar to this, with all the places that she's shot from, and she makes notes about a good view to the, to the
Right.
west
Mhm.
or the north, or not a good view to, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. She has about 4 times as many spots as I do, but trying to catch
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Autumn, I was mentioned that Autumn mentioned Pima Community College. And I think some of you, Liz, I
Mhm.
think you were talking about that in one of our
Yeah.
Yeah,
rehearsals. Yeah.
we've all shot from that spot. That's
Mhm.
the West Campus. What is it? Greasewood? Is Greasewood the right?
Yeah, off of Greasewood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a place
Beautiful
that's,
view of downtown from there.
yeah, one of the shot I shared of that gigantic bolt, it was all over pretty much covered the whole city, was shot from the turnout off of Greasewood, into the college.
Mhm.
But you get the buildings in the foreground. A little farther north on Greasewood, when there are big storms, in the city, you'll often see half a dozen cars or more and people lined up along there because it's a fantastic view, um, of the city, an elevated view. And some people have shot from a mountain, which again is another one of those places you need to know when the
Mhm.
storms are. You don't want to be, a high object, you know.
Right.
when-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it's frustrating when you're driving up at 5 miles an hour and there's people
Yeah.
in front of you and you want to get up there and the storm's
Yeah.
there.
When there's a storm over Tucson, though, that place has a spectacular view.
Yeah.
That's true.
Susan asked, how about Case Park? Where is Case Park?
Oh, Case, that one's if you hike a little bit into the desert and go up the hill at Case Natural Resource Park, that's a pretty good view.
Where is that?
Yeah, where is that near?
It's kind of like Hountain and Broadway sort of area. It's a neighborhood park that
Oh,
has like a lot of natural resource
oh
area
yeah.
in there. It's
Yeah, I know
really
it.
nice, but it is very exposed.
Hmm.
So you would definitely have to be shooting a storm in the distance from there. Similar to a lot of the places I would want to recommend, like Baba Duag and Mount Lemon, or
Yeah.
Finger Rock, Trailhead. I really like as a
Mhm.
view over the city. I used
Yeah.
to love the north end of Campbell, but they've been shutting that off to the public. I guess the
And
neighborhood was upset with people up there.
Yeah.
Um,
And parking garages are a favorite, obviously.
yeah, but you're not going to get saguaros with parking
No,
garages.
no, but
no.
you can, from TMC parking garage, uh, um, you can get, if the storm is in the Catalinas, and bolts are hitting in the foothills, you can get some extraordinary shots from there. And the other thing is, with a, I have a really nice 100 mm Canon. It's actually a macro lens, NL lens. It's a f2.8 100 mm lens. Um, I've shot lightning over and beyond the Tucson mountains from the Tucson Medical Center parking garage with that lens, and you get the buildings downtown in nice sharp focus. And, with a telephoto lens, you can be, 8-10 miles away from where the storm is and get some spectacular images.
Susan says she can get good photos from the dirt road Leland that leads into Case Park.
I'm not
Yeah,
aware of that one. I gotta scout that.
Yeah.
I haven't done really much shooting from the east side at all. I'm not as familiar with that. I need to
One of my
go
favorite spots on
find
the
it.
east side as well used to be that steakhouse.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That's now like closed down. You can't get back there now. But I did scout because there's a big hill that goes over when you go to Rita Ranch. So there's a great view from there of the valley below. But I have noticed if you drive down Escalante a little bit, there's a few like dirt areas you could pull over that basically overlooks that area as well. That's a pretty good overlook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
occasionally,
Yeah, talking of that area, I know a lot of people try to get lightning over the boneyard with the old
Yes.
aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
I did a lot of that last year trying to get that.
That can be tough to get an angle on.
I
Mhm.
often use, if there's some place that I'm thinking about, I'll often go on Google Maps or Google Earth and just sort of check out, see if there are roads, that
Mhm.
go someplace that looks like a good possibility. And then if I have time, I'll go and check it out when there's not a storm.
How many do quite a few people from outside of Tucson come this time of year to take
Um,
photos,
well, I mean, they do come down from Phoenix because,
but not
Mhm.
Minnesota?
And I meet
oh
people who
Yeah,
have
they do.
come
Okay.
for the monsoon. I
Yeah.
probably in the last year or two, I probably met a dozen photographers who are from out of state,
Okay, that's great.
specifically came, to
I
do.
met a few Europeans last year that were in town for the storms.
Okay. So the
That was-
reputation is expanded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, the Storm Chaser tour companies that do tornadoes, they often will do a monsoon
Yeah.
tour or two, and they'll have clients from all over the world.
Mhm.
Well, again, I just can't I can't wait for the storms to start. I have one, all the years I lived in Tucson, I have one picture of lightning, and it was just a fluke. So to see all of your photos, it's like, oh wow,
That's how it starts. That
That's
one fluke.
no, well,
Yeah,
that
that's
was
how I
good.
started my presentation, was like the fluke and then
I
turned
know.
into something years later.
I
Mhm.
know, I didn't persevere. I did, but it was an old Canon. I mean, it was, single
Yeah.
lens reflex
Hmm.
days. So when you're processing the photos, you take many, many, many photos. So I mean, how many really good shots do you get in a season?
In a season, probably, I mean, it depends on the season. Last season, I think I got less than 100, but some years I've got between 200 or 300 that I've edited. And obviously I've
Okay.
taken many, many more than I actually edit.
Are you guys, do you keep track of the weather right now? I mean, are you doing that for us? Because we have a question. It's Tuesday
Yeah.
through Thursday. So yeah, Tuesday through Thursday.
I have been hearing, yeah, later this week is gonna start.
Yeah.
The monsoon's actually gonna start later this week.
Yeah, I've heard Wednesday, but I'm thinking Tuesday is possible.
All
Yeah,
right,
I gotta
well,
start dusting off the lightning triggers.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They lay dormant off season.
And
well,
get batteries for them.
oh yeah, you gotta make sure you got everything. All right, well, thanks again. Maybe at the end of the season, we can re-meet and we can see what 2025 looked like because, excuse me, apparently this is going to be a good monsoon. That's the report.
Yeah, I'm hearing as
I
well.
Rarely,
Yeah.
you rarely have them say that.
Right.
They usually say 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, it's already good in New Mexico. It's
Yeah.
just not reached us yet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everyone who came, and thank you so much, guys. Really nice to meet you. And David, I remember your name.
It's written down there on the
It's
screen.
written down. Oh, look, there's that. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Enjoy the rain. Enjoy the monsoon.
Thanks for
Thank you.
doing this, Karen.
Thank you. Oh, I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. Thank you.